I guess through a series of bad decisions, poor choices, broken relationships, broken promises, I ended up finding myself there kind of unexpectedly and quickly. I had actually been homeless for a while before I even realized that I was homeless. There's homelessness looks different. There's a lot of different types of homelessness, and so at first it was we'd stay with friends or stay in a hotel for a while or something. But I still felt a little bit secure in where I was, and it wasn't until one night. I literally ended up with nowhere else to go. And so the only thing I owned was a van that had been given to me. And I found an empty church parking lot. It was actually the church that I kind of grew up in. And parked there one night. And it was laying there in the back of the van, kind of just looking out at the sky around me and just kind of how immense and overwhelming the darkness was, that it really hit me like, man, I'm actually homeless. Like, it wasn't until that moment that I realized it, and I felt lost and I didn't know where to go from that point, so then I wish I could say that was the turning point and everything got better after that, because I realized my mistake, but that was really just kind of the beginning of it.
So you're the author of a new book, which we have on display out in the lobby and for donations available. In the book, you talk about some of those factors that go into that and making those decisions and so forth. Can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, so I guess it started with just, I want to say poor financial planning. And really just selfish desires and decisions, and kind of putting myself and what I wanted over what needed to be done. Living in homelessness really was just living with an overwhelming feeling of guilt and shame constantly. And I always felt like I had to hide it. I went to work, I, would be around people, and even some of my family didn't know what I was going through. I just, I guess people say a lot of times that the homeless are invisible, but for me, part of it was I wanted to keep it that way. I was ashamed and constantly kind of afraid to share what was actually going on in my life, which just kind of compounds and builds on where I was at. It wasn't getting any better.
So a prodigal journey, obviously, and alluding to the prodigal son. Can you tell us about that, how that story impacts you and what it means to you?
Yeah, so the story of the prodigal son has always been something I've kind of been interested in and drawn to. Even as a kid, it was just always something I thought it was an inspiring story. As a teenager, I remember writing stuff about the prodigal son. I wanted to create things based on that story, but which seems crazy because then years later, I actually found myself kind of living out that story. But it wasn't until I found myself on the other side of it, coming out of homelessness, that it actually kind of hit me and started resonating in a different way. The story of the prodigal son is my story. Just like he was squandering his wealth and things that were given to him, I was kind of doing the same thing and just living selfishly and looking out for myself. And it starts off, you think oh, I've got all this freedom and I can do whatever I want, but you quickly, in the story, he finds himself literally eating out of, the pig's trough, and that's when it hit him. And I guess for me, I feel like my moment at the trough was the story in the back of the van, that first night that it was that's when it hit me wow, I'm really here? How did I end up here? You know, and so then there was a long journey back home. And for the prodigal son, you know, it tells us he went home to the father. And I guess for me, it was a pretty long journey to get back there, but it ultimately ended up with leading me back to my faith.
So when you make that decision to change, what practical steps do you take to move forward, and who was there to help you?
So for me, I guess to start with, what really kind of prompted the change for me was when I found myself as a single father. I had 2 kids that I was fully responsible for. And even though I had been a father before that moment, it wasn't until it was my sole responsibility that it really hit me like, I've got to make a change. I didn't want for them what I had at that time. So the impact that just having them had on my story kind of prompted and started everything. And then just surrounding myself with family and people who were supportive and encouraging, but also guiding me in good decisions and things to do. And then clearly, as it's alluded in the story, but God was my number one. Like, that's really what brought me out of that. I'll never forget, there was a night I was driving home from work, and I was actually just right down the road from the church where I had been staying in my van. And I know it was late at night one night, and I was looking out and looking at the stars, and it just hit me at that moment that, like, these are the same stars that kind of scared me years ago when I was sleeping in my van. And now it was just like, this immense God has created all of this, and for whatever reason, he's trusted me with 2 little kids. And I just felt so unworthy and ashamed of everything I had done up to that point. I ended up getting home and pretty much just laid face down in the dirt, just kind of really just asking for his forgiveness and love, and not really knowing for sure what that was going to mean and where I was going to go from there, but just knowing that the only way I was going to find myself out of the situation we were in was through his grace and mercy and love.
So if you're new to the whole Calloway family, you might have picked up on the fact that he looks remarkably similar to our executive director. Your twin brother is the executive director of Hope Calloway, and your family has played a big role in the homeless and working with the homeless. How does that influence you? How did that impact you?
Yeah, so one, just to start with, it's kind of amazing just to see how God works. Like, Nathan was not necessarily, and I'm telling his story for him too, but he wasn't necessarily looking for, oh, I want to work with homeless people. He had worked in nonprofit for years, and he was offered this position, and he ended up there. And it's just amazing to me to see how God kind of orchestrates everything. Like, the past that he had helping me out of my homelessness, and now he's able to use that, you know, to kind of spread that same hope to other people. But through Hope Calloway and the time he spends there, and that I've volunteered many times, I guess I've just gained, one, a lot of confidence in being able to tell my story. And then just a stronger desire to raise awareness and help others who are going through the same things that I went through. Because I'm able to, through him, see it a lot more firsthand. And it's looking back and seeing what people are going through now, and looking back and seeing, like, that's what I know what they're going through. Like, I know what they're thinking, because I used to think the exact same stuff, you know,
So you took the time to write the book and to tell your story in detail. And what inspired you to do that, and what do you hope people gain from that?
One, it's a book that really, in my head, I've been writing for like 10 years. I've known it was a story that I needed to share. I really believe God didn't bring me through homelessness and, bring me to where I am today just for me. He gave me this story to share with others and to bring hope. But for a long time, I was afraid to tell the story. Especially like now in my life, because I'm not even originally from this area. So for several years, I kind of lived here and nobody knew what my past was. It was really part of what prompted me to come here. We loved the area, my family was from here, but it was kind of like, I can go there and start fresh and nobody has to know my past, But that was almost another selfish decision to keep it to myself all this time. So just through sharing the story, I really hope that it can be used to, one, inspire everyone, to raise awareness about what homelessness looks like, but to inspire others to get involved in people in the lives of people in their community who are going through this same kind of thing I went through. And then also just to encourage those who are going through this now, who are living through whatever troubles that they are, to be able to read that and know that it doesn't matter what you've done or where you've been, there is hope on the other side.
Amen.
You're obviously very passionate about the subject and, of course, about Hope Calloway. Can you talk about the work that Hope Calloway does and the impact it has on people in this situation?
Yeah, so I didn't have a place like Hope Calloway for me. There were plenty of community organizations and churches that I kind of learned like where to go, like, oh, on this day each month I can go to this church and they'll help with this. Or I can go here and get this. But one of the things that Hope Calloway does different that I kind of wish I had had at that time is they come alongside you and begin to teach you and encourage you and work with you to make things better for yourself and your family and your future. And as appreciative as I am of my story and where I've come from, what I've gone through that's built me up to who I am today, I can't help but wonder, like, if I had something like Hope Calloway in my life, could I have gotten there a little bit quicker? Could it have avoided some of the things that my children had to go through when they were really young? So I love Hope Calloway and what they do, and I would love to see even more places like that all over the country doing stuff,
Mm-hmm.
As someone who's been through this transformative experience, what do you tell someone who is in that type of dark place?
I guess just first and foremost is that there is hope, which I know sounds cliche because like there's a big thing that says hope there. I promise, as I've gone through this journey, it wasn't like I was like, one day I'm going to sit on a stage next to the word hope. But it's true, there is hope. And no matter what you've done, no matter what you've gone through, no matter what those troubles are, there's a God who loves you, and He's there with mercy, forgiveness, compassion for you. And for me, that's where I found my hope, And I know 15 years ago, if somebody had said, there is hope, I probably would have been like, oh, that's easy for you to say. You're not living what I'm living. But the thing is, what hope does is it gave me the encouragement. It gave me a little bit of joy. I still had troubles. I was still going through stuff. It's not like, oh, all of a sudden everything got better. But I had something, a higher calling, a purpose that I was living for. I had responsibilities that were important to me, and I was striving for better. And it took a lot of time and it took a lot of work, and I still have a lot of work to do, but there's still hope in the end.
So finally, how can our guests here tonight best support Hope Calloway and the work that it's doing?
So primarily I would just say get involved, whether that's through volunteering or in a financial capacity or even just raising awareness. One thing that I've learned is there are a lot of people that just aren't even aware that homelessness is something that we really deal with. And then finally, for me, I've got my book available in the back, and all proceeds from the book today, here and online, go fully to support Hope Calloway. So, one, I would love to share my story with all of you, so I encourage you to get a copy of my book, but just know that it's all going back to Hope Calloway today.
Not an easy story to share, and we appreciate you taking the time and sharing it with us tonight.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.